So if you're ready to vote, most of you, that also means you're going to need somebody to vote for. And that's why we've got all these candidates that we've managed to twist their arms and get them out here tonight. So I was hoping Bob could come up first. Bob, are you ready? Bob is tweeting. Is Bob here? Bob Simpson is the MLA. Sorry, we only have one Bob on the panel.
I didn't know that. It's a common name.
Bob, you're the MLA for Caribou North.
Correct.
And you've been the MLA since 2005?
Yes.
And you won again in 2009 for the NDP?
Yes.
And now you sit as an independent?
Yes.
All right, can I get you sitting right here?
You bet.
Jane Sterk is the leader of the Green Party. Jane is a former municipal councillor in Esquimalt, and she is running in the riding of, if memory serves, Victoria Beacon Hill, which is held by Carol James. Jane, I'm going to ask you to sit two over, and we'll try to sandwich some young folks in here, because we're going to get some people up here to help me ask questions. Who's next? We've got Rob Flemming here, who is the NDP critic for environment. Rob, you're backstage. Come on out. Rob has been the MLA since 2005. We can get you right in the middle there.
Thank you.
For Victoria Swan Lake, which I heard has the highest proportion of single people of any riding in BC.
Don't tell his wife.
Do you have anything to do with that, Rob? So you've each got microphones. We've got Gabby Kalaw here from the Liberal Party. Gabby, thanks for showing up. Gabby works in telecom. You're running for your first time for political office, am I right?
That's correct, provincially.
First time provincially.
Yeah.
And he's in Vancouver, Kensington, which I think is 70% non-English mother tongue speakers.
It is 75% ethnic diversity, and
all right.
about 25%.
I'm going to be pulling out nerdy riding trivia all night, so get ready for it. And finally, we've got Duane Nickull from the BC Conservative Party. Duane, I'm going to get you sitting right on the end here. Duane, you might know from his punk rock project. He was also the co-founder of Yellow Dragon Software, which was bought by Adobe for a pretty penny. So Duane is probably our most, has the most acute business sense, I would guess, of the folks we have on stage. And Duane is running against Premier Christy Clark in Vancouver Point Grey. Thank you, Duane. So to get some questions going these people's ways, I've asked three friends to come up here. Andrea, Sam, and Caleb are all here to hold these people's feet to the fire. Come on up. Okay, so we need like airport security in these theaters. Okay, so Andrea Curtis, if you've ever been to a festival in East Van, Illuminaries, Parade of Lost Souls, Car Free Festival, yeah? Then you know her work. So she works with Transformation Project. She's a community producer. We've got Sam Harrison. Did anybody see that video with the handsome young man who is giving that presentation at the Enbridge Northern Gateway panel hearing? The viral one? That's Sam. So now you know. He also runs Kids for Climate Action. And Caleb Behn. Anybody here got some fans? All right. Caleb, I know Caleb through Fiona, who's one of the producers, along with Damien, who's here shooting on Fractured Land, which is a documentary coming out about hydraulic fracturing in northern BC, and you're going to hear a little bit more from each of them. So what I was hoping is that you guys could go down the line, Andrea, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what the big question is that you came here tonight that you're hoping these candidates can help answer. So you've got 3 minutes, and I'll give you a little 30-second warning. But you don't have to use it all the time, because we are running late.
Okay, here we go. You guys can hear me okay? Awesome. So what I wanted to start with is a little bit about what brought me here today. I kind of feel like I'm almost an unlikely person to be sitting in this spot. But what brought me here is, well, growing up in my family, voting was really taboo. It was akin to talking about sex at the dinner table. Like, it just did not happen. And I remember one day, I think I was about 19 years old, and there was a provincial election in Alberta. And like proper, responsible citizens, my mom brought me to the polls, and I had absolutely no idea what to do. So I'm standing there in the little booth, and all I can remember is just Mark X. And I'm just like this is all like another language to me. And I look down at the ballot, and I marked an X for any woman who was there. And so it really makes me think, you know, there's what brings people into this information, what helps them understand like how they're going to make these decisions, it's really different for everyone. And so when I found myself in Vancouver in 2005, I started getting really involved in my community and like some really cool things that were going on in East Vancouver. And Kai mentioned a few things I was involved in, like some of the street festivals. I was involved in I did some Workless Party stuff. You may have heard of it. Hung out with the Public Dreams crew, with the Illuminaries, the Parade of Lost Souls, and all of that. And I even worked at the Folk Festival. And what happened in those instances is I started coming up against roadblocks or lack of funding. And I started to have to do a lot of power mapping. And it really brought me back to a place where there was an elected official to account for in a lot of these things that I was having challenges with. And I started figuring out how to talk to them and how to figure out, you know, like what was going on in terms of funding, you know, when arts funding was cut and et cetera. So my message today is really about helping young people really connect and get involved and really spend a lot of intention in issues that matter to them. And when young people get involved in something that really matters to them, they're going to start power mapping that. So I want to encourage people to really start figuring out who's accountable, who's responsible. And it doesn't have to be climate change that's engaging to you, but whatever it is, you know, keep that.
So your question's about if we're going to be.
And so my question, I wrote it out. So I've got it a little bit more like defined here. So I'll ask it in question form. So I believe it's unfair to dismiss young people as apathetic. Politics, for many people, is confusing, it's corrupt, it's disconnected, it's boring, and it's a language of sound bites and empty promises. Not always, I'm just saying for a lot of people. No offense to anybody, of course, no.
Remains to be seen.
We'll get there. Okay, so the traditional campaign trail, I feel, isn't necessarily blazing connections to an enormous population of young people disengaged in the political process. So my question is, as elected officials or people running for a position in the legislature, you still represent these people who are disconnected. And my question is, how do you propose to be accountable to this demographic?
Thank you, Andrea. Sam, 3 minutes. Story of your life. It's been short so far, so it shouldn't take you too long.
Okay. One, I'd like to welcome my boomers out there. Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. So I'm 16 years old. I can't vote, so you don't have to worry too much about me quite yet. But my sister and I, Sophie, we were raised in a house where both of my parents are political scientists. So this has always kind of been dinner table conversation. But the interesting thing is I can't vote, and I don't actually have the power to make decisions with regards to government. But the current decisions being made by the BC government have drastic impacts on my friends and I and our future. And we don't necessarily have the say we want in these issues. So I've got two main questions, actually. Hope that's okay. One about our emissions within BC, and then one about our global impact. So firstly, it was mentioned before, BC has a legislated target to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 33% by 2020. And my first question is, as a candidate and as someone representing your party, can you commit to doing that, and how are you going to do it? One example is with liquefied natural gas alone, the BC government's own Climate Action Secretariat estimates that that's going to raise emissions within BC by 25%. And it seems inconsistent to me how we can raise by a quarter and drop by a third at the same time. So that's my first question. My second question is, my friends and I, we have a belief that our impact on climate change doesn't just end at our borders. At the moment, BC exports a lot more carbon than we actually burn ourselves, and all these proposals on the table of oil pipelines, coal ports, and yes, natural gas, that would make our global impact 10 times greater than our 2020 emissions target. And that just seems like the wrong direction to be going. That's not the jobs we want for our future. That's not the economy we want for our future. So my second question is, how are you dealing with BC's growing carbon exports? And would you saddle us with an economy based solely on fossil fuels?
Thank you, Sam. Caleb?
Damn. Oh, tough act to follow. God, can you cue up that slide for me? So I'm going to show behind you is a map of my territory. Every second that passes for the next minute. Oh, well, not quite yet.
I'm on it. One moment, please.
God was a woman, obviously.
I'm surprised you're surprised.
Touche, madam. Touche. You win this round. Every second that passes is a month. And this thing's going to play for a minute. This is the Horn River Basin. This is where I'm from. This is my territory. I'm Etcherdene and Daniza. I acknowledge my presence in unceded Coast Salish territory. And before I ask my question, I just want to make a few points. That what you see behind you is the single greatest sort of area impact in my territory, but it's by no means the only. 95% of Fort Nelson First Nations core territory was sold for LNG, for shale, or not LNG, for shale gas in the last 5 years. And 65% of the piece, according to the recent David Suzuki report, has been impacted by industrial development. So we're talking coal, forestry, wind, hydroelectric, oil, gas, conventional, unconventional. And you know, most of you, I hope most of you have seen the Fractured Land trailer and that kind of thing. You know a little bit about what I'm all about. Thanks, team. And my question, I guess my issue is that I came here and I don't know what to ask you guys. I don't know what to say because I don't have faith based on this. This was done under law. This was done, and this is all to scale, by the way. This is OGC data. This is what my territory looks like now. And my question, I guess, is simply, like, I didn't know what to ask because I've seen what law does. That's why I went and got a law degree. I've seen the consequences. I've gone home and my grandfather's slowly dying of cancer, and I watch him and talk with him about his dreams for our territory, and I watch his heart break as we talk about the most recent, Turvida contaminated waste facility that's going to be 4 kilometers from our res. And so I didn't know what to ask, and I still don't. But what I think I'll say, and I'll ask, is what do you intend to do about cumulative impacts if elected? And also, what do you intend to do to give hope to people like myself who don't have much hope based upon this? Most of you, with the exception of Rob, as candidates will be here in the South, and most of you are here in the South. But what makes money for this province is up north in a lot of ways. Not entirely, but in a lot of ways. And so as we look at LNG and as we hear discussing proposals for this and that from my perspective, I wonder what you will do as candidates to engage with these questions. And I also wonder if you recognize the interconnected nature of what you see behind you, and Enbridge and tar sands and Site C. Do you guys understand that the place that I come from is the gas tank for this province? And it's been in many ways saddled, as you said, like to be a future carbon-intensive driver for our economy, but comes with a great cost. And I think it's a cost that's inequitable. It's inequitably borne and carried by people like myself in my territory. And so my question is simply, what can you offer for hope for people like myself, and what can you guys, now I'll put this out to you as well, what can you offer and what can you engage with? Because I'm not sure how many of you guys have been up here. I'm not sure many of you guys see this. And it's a broad question, so I give you room to offer not only policies in your sound bites, but a real statement from you as a human being. That's what I hope for, a real statement from you as a human being. That we're here, but that's up there, and they're connected.
Thank you for that, Caleb. So that is exactly why we've asked 5 people to come up instead of just, reading policy off their party websites. We do want to have a real conversation, and that's what we're here for. Each of you, I'm hoping, will take 3 minutes and introduce yourselves, because I did a really cruddy job with your bios. And this is your first chance to try to answer the questions that you've heard so far, but we're going to have all evening to get into it. So if you've got 3 minutes and you tell us who you are, where you're coming from, and what your relationship is to this issue and the questions, that would be great. I'll start from the end with Duane.